As we are now well into the month of November, it's time for your October monthly market update. So in this video, I'm going to be giving you a monthly update for the Fraser Valley with a specific focus on Surrey, Langley and White Rock. And the month of October was actually a little bit surprising. We saw essentially a stabilization with a little bit of an uptick in sales. Typically, as we head towards the end of the year after September, we see a decrease in both the number of listings and the number of sales. And we did see a slight decrease in the number of new listings. However, as I mentioned, that slight uptick in the number of sales was a little bit unexpected, and that increased the sales to active listings ratio to maintain a balanced market through this time. In regards to price, pretty much across all property types and locations, we saw a slight decrease, again depending on which price metric we're looking at. So I'll touch on a few of those as I go through the actual numbers in the video, but you can expect that the benchmark prices all had a slight decrease. However, when we're looking at average prices, some of them may have had a slight uptick. But overall, at least at this point in time, it seems like the majority of the major declines are already past us. And with that recent increase in interest rates just a few weeks ago, another half a point, it would be expected we would see at least some sort of a decrease in prices just due to the sole fact that there's been a decrease in buying power and an increase in mortgage payments. So does this mean that we've already hit the bottom of the market, or we're getting very near to it and we're going to be trending in the upwards direction soon? Well, you're gonna have to stick around to find out. What's going on, guys? If this is your first time on my channel, my name's Alex Dunbar and I'm a local realtor based out of the Surrey and Langley areas. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in hearing more of and you want to be kept in the loop and first to know what's going on in my local market, then I suggest you think about subscribing to my channel. But with that, let's dive right into the numbers. So I'll go ahead and share my screen here, and as you can see, we have the MLS summary for the Fraser Valley of October 2022. So first of all, let's take a look at all areas combined, and we'll take a look at the difference month to month from October to September. So taking a look at the detached market, we can see that benchmark prices were down 1.8%, average prices down about 0.2%. Keep in mind, benchmark prices are going to be a little bit delayed, so even when things start to turn around, I would still expect the benchmark prices to continue to slightly decline for a month or two afterwards, whereas the average price is going to give you a little bit of a better, more accurate reflection of what is going on at this very point in time. The benchmark's just more or less going to give you a better overall look at the market from a bird's eye view per se. Moving on, we have townhomes. As you can see, a 1.5% decrease in benchmark prices, 2.5% decrease in average prices. So they were hit a little bit harder out of all of the property types. And then moving on to condos, we see a 0.5% decrease in the benchmark price and a 0.6% decrease in the average price. So again, slight decreases across the board as expected with that recent interest rate hike, and of course we're not quite out of the woods yet. So moving on, let's take a look at the White Rock and South Surrey area. So benchmark prices were down 0.1% for detached homes, but 4.2% for the average price of detached homes, so took a little bit of a beating there. However, if we take a look at the number of sales, there were a little bit lower number of sales. Of course, when we see too low of a sample size, the average isn't always a great reflection because numbers can pull it in one direction or the other. I digress though, let's move along. Townhomes, we saw a 0.2% decrease in benchmark prices, but as I said, 5.3% increase in the average price. So even when we're seeing an increase in the average price on a monthly basis, we expect to see at least a slight decline in benchmark prices as it trails behind. Apartments down 0.8%, but the average price of condos up 1.8%. And this is a trend that I've actually been seeing, is that the South Surrey White Rock area has actually held up a lot better than a lot of the other areas across Surrey and Langley, especially as of late. A big part of this is due to the low inventory and just the attractiveness of the area. I just had a client that I had a possession for today, and I was speaking with one of the other agents that does a lot more business in this area, and he mentioned that essentially we had very good timing within that market just due to the fact that when there was 10 homes similar to the one that we ended up purchasing and getting a great deal on, now there's only about 3 and everyone is fighting over them and multiple offers are back. Not that they're going way over asking price or anything. There's just a lot of competition, which essentially you don't want to be involved in, because then you have less room for negotiation and it's tougher to do your due diligence and make sure you're getting that perfect home. Moving on to Langley. So taking a look at the detached market, down 1.8% in benchmark prices, but up 2.2% in the average price. Now, the Langley market has been hammered pretty good for the detached market. If we look at the year-over-year decrease in average prices, down 10% from the previous year. So there's been a pretty large and rapid decline across Langley. But as I mentioned before, it appears that we've seen the majority of those price declines and we shouldn't see anything significantly greater, but it is all going to come down to interest rates. Moving on to townhomes, we see benchmark prices down 2.2%, but the average price down 4.9%. So it took a little bit of a beating here. The detached market was leading the charge, followed by townhomes. So now I think maybe we're seeing a little bit of that was slightly delayed. Moving on to apartments, the benchmark price down 1.8%, but the average price up 0.8%. Moving on, we'll leave the city of Surrey as a whole. So the Surrey Central, if you're not familiar, this is kind of the area surrounding Fleetwood, Bear Creek, and some of the other communities in that part. I know Surrey Central, many of you may think that means Whalley or the area surrounding Surrey City Centre, but that is actually going to mean North Surrey. So we'll get to that in a minute. But detached prices down 2.1% month over month, down 3.3% in regards to the average price. So still seeing declines in that area. Townhomes down 1.5% in regards to the benchmark price, down almost 8% for the average price. So the first thing I'm always going to look for here when we see such a large number in only 1 month's time is the number of sales. And there's actually a decent number of sales. So townhomes took a beating here. And I'm sure if we did a little bit more digging, we could find out why, but we will leave that for this video. Moving on to apartments, we can see an increase actually in the benchmark price month over month, 1.4%, and a 13.5% increase in the average price. But again, looking at the number of sales, 23 is pretty low. So that's probably a major factor in why it was such an increase. Could have just been a larger number of larger homes, newer homes, 2 bedrooms instead of 1 bedrooms. You get the point here. Next, looking at Cloverdale, we can see a 2.6% decrease for detached homes in regards to benchmark price, but a 7.5% decrease in regards to average price. Again, Cloverdale has been hit very hard. Even if we're looking at the average price year over year, it's a 13.5% decrease, greater than that of Langley. So definitely some great deals in Cloverdale right now, which is my personal favorite part of Surrey. Taking a look at townhomes, we can see that benchmark prices down 1%, but average prices down 5.6%. Again, both a little bit lower number of total sales, so that does definitely play a role, but lots of opportunity for townhomes and detached in these markets. Moving on to apartments, we can see a 3.5% increase and then just a ridiculous number here, 26.4%. There was only 11 sales, so obviously this could have been an extremely nice unit, larger units. There's some pretty nice complexes such as Waterstone, for instance, or potentially St. Andrews. If you're unfamiliar, I will make a video on those 2 condo complexes, which are actually 2 of my favorite in the Cloverdale area. I'm not exactly sure where these sales were, but those are just some examples that could have definitely made these numbers happen. And then lastly, looking at North Surrey, we can see a 2.3% decrease in the detached market for benchmark prices, but a 1.3% increase in average price. Townhomes benchmark price up 0.9% and the average price is up 4.5%. But as we can see here, the average has been down pretty significantly in comparison to looking at something like Cloverdale up here and where prices are there. Moving on to apartments, benchmark prices up 0.8% and average prices down 5.2%. So still taking a little bit of a beating. There is a large number of inventory in the area, as we can see with the number of active listings right here, 351. If we compare that to something like Cloverdale, there's only 43. So there's just so much for buyers to choose from. And when I was on the MLS the other day, there's actually over 100 assignments right now, which is one of the markets that I've been talking about for a while now, where I'm seeing a lot of opportunity, but I will get to that in a minute. So now I just want to share a couple of graphs with you to show you a couple of different things. So when we're looking at these three markets in regards to detached prices, we can see that South Surrey is leading the charge at the highest price at just under 1.9, followed by Surrey Central, or as I mentioned, kind of in that Fleetwood area at 1.483, and then Cloverdale coming in actually last. I thought it was above that at 1.412, and North Surrey at 1.474. So Cloverdale at the lowest price point across all of Surrey. A little bit surprising there. But again, just providing some pretty great opportunities, especially in that detached market. Now moving on to the townhome market. So South Surrey, White Rock, head and shoulders above the rest at 923,000, and we are looking at benchmark prices, followed by Surrey and Cloverdale, which are pretty close in this sense, and then North Surrey at 742,000. Now North Surrey doesn't have a ton of townhomes. They're primarily more so apartments in the area, where you're going to see a lot more in Cloverdale and the Fleetwood areas. So this is probably a major reason for it. There are some older complexes which would obviously pull those numbers down. And then lastly, moving on to apartments. So once again, actually Cloverdale and South Surrey pretty much identical, then just followed by Central Surrey and then North Surrey at the bottom of this. Although new construction in North Surrey is actually still substantially high. A lot of these high rises are still between $1,000 to $1,100 per square foot. But if you're looking in the wood frame market, then you're probably looking at closer to $800 or $900 per square foot. As I mentioned though, assignments in these areas could be a huge opportunity. There's a lot of people who I don't think are going to be able to complete on their units, and they're at risk of losing their deposits. So you can definitely snatch up deals here, especially with the projects that are closer to completion. Now moving on, I just want to show you the benchmark price for a minute. As we can see, it's kind of coming to a bit of a curve. So we think we're getting close to that bottom. It's not as steep of a downhill. Again, this is delayed. So when we actually take a look at the median price, we can see it's starting to level out, as well as the average price. Again, I don't think we're quite at the bottom yet. I think we're still going to have a little bit more downwards pressure, but it looks like we are having a bit more of a soft landing per se than obviously at the beginning when we are on this sharp decline, and it's almost mirroring the upslope to an extent, which is kind of what we'd expect. Again, this is all going to come down to what they do with interest rates, because if they're to increase them again significantly, we could be in a little bit of trouble. But the other thing I wanted to show you is in regards to new listings. If we take a look, typically the peak of these listings are somewhere in the March, April, or May. As we can see, so May, this one is June, July, March, April, and then March. So typically what we see after April is that listings will decline pretty much up until December and then take off again once we get back to January. This is pretty consistent as we hit a bottom in December pretty much on an annual basis, and then inventory comes back up and builds up into the spring before it starts to come back down. Now sales will follow a little bit of a similar trend, not exactly to the same extent. Typically the high sales volumes are a little bit later, so in that May to June part of the year. As you can see here, a lot of those peaks are in the April, May, June, but we're starting to see a leveling out here. Again, it's too early to know exactly what's going to happen, but the start of a potential trend here. So I was hoping that was going to be a little bit of a quicker recap, and unfortunately I went on a little bit longer than I was anticipating, but hopefully that gives you a better idea of what's going on in the market, at least at a granular level within each property type and location on a month-to-month basis. So where are we headed next? What's going on over the next couple of months? Are we headed lower? I would expect to see a little bit more of a decline in price. Again, nothing significant, especially due to the fact that inventory is continuing to decline and we saw the sales numbers pretty much maintaining or slightly up from last month. So what exactly does this mean for you? Well, of course it depends on what your situation is. Are you looking to buy? Are you looking to sell? Are you looking to make an upsize? Are you looking to make a downsize? It's still a great market for upsizers, primarily just due to the fact that there's been that major price compression, as we've seen the greatest declines in detached homes, and then followed by townhomes and then condos. Now, if you pair this with the fact that you are moving from somewhere like Vancouver or Burnaby or Richmond out into the valley, then these decreases are going to be significantly increased, and you're going to be able to afford a lot more property moving to those areas. If you're looking to downsize, well, it's not necessarily the greatest time, but again, it's going to depend on your situation. If you're moving moving in one of those situations like I just mentioned, maybe from Vancouver or Richmond out into the valley. As you may have seen in my previous videos, the unicorns here are the detached markets in Richmond and Vancouver, which are actually about 8 to 10% up year over year. I didn't check the stats for this month specifically, but as of last month, they were still holding pretty strong. So as a buyer, I believe you have a pretty good opportunity in this next upcoming window. I don't want to make any specific predictions on when the bottom of this market's going to be. I think that the next 3 to 6 months are going to present a pretty good buying opportunity for you though. And as a seller, it really just depends on what your situation is. What you need to do right now is look at your overall situation and not just focus on the fact that you could have sold your home for $50,000 more last month. Because maybe your home is going to be selling for $50,000 less than last month. However, the home that you're looking to move into has actually dropped by $100,000. And when we look at the net difference, you're actually in a $50,000 better position than you would have been. So again, you really need to take a holistic approach. And that's about going to do it for my video today. So if you did get any sort of value from this, all I ask is that you hit that thumbs up button. And I apologize, it did go on a little bit longer than I was hoping it would. But for those of you that are looking to get a little bit more in-depth knowledge of specific areas and property types, hopefully you found it helpful. And if you want to dive into the stats a little bit more yourself, I will leave a link down in the description for you. And if after watching this video, you want to find out a little bit more about your unique situation and what your options are and what the best plan moving forward for you is, you can scroll down and book a call with me to chat about buying, selling, investing, or real estate in general. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.